everyone. My name is Kanika. In the last few slides, we discussed about data handling. That is, we discussed about various kind of graphs like pictograph, bar graph, histogram, and pie chart as well. Also, we discussed about probability. Now we will be talking about another aspect of the chapter that would be mean, median, and mode. We call that as the value of central tendency. Let's understand. Let me share my slides with you. All right. So in this, we will be talking about mean, median, mode for ungrouped data. Also, we will be talking about introduction to group data and weighted mean. Ungrouped data means we will be talking about discrete data. We have already learned that in previous slides. Also, we will be talking about group data. Group data means the data which is divided in the form of class intervals. So let's understand them one by one. Now we will be talking about mean, median, and mode for ungrouped data. Let's understand via this video.
Grammarly does more than catch errors. With Grammarly, you can find really good,
Hi, this is Rob. Welcome to Math Antics. In this lesson, we're going to learn about three important math concepts called the mean, the median, and the mode. Math often deals with data sets, and data sets are often just collections or groups of numbers. These numbers may be the results of scientific measurements or surveys or other data collection methods. For example, you might record the ages of each member of your family into a data set. Or you might measure the weight of each of your pets and list them in a data set. Those data sets are fairly small and easy to understand, but you could have much bigger data sets. A really big data set might contain the cost of every item in a store, or the top speed of every land mammal, or the brightness of all the stars in our galaxy. Those data sets would contain a lot of different numbers. And if you had to look at a big data set all at one time, it would be pretty hard to make sense of it or say much about it besides, well, that's a lot of numbers. But that's where mean, median, and mode can really help us out. There are three different properties of data sets that can give us useful, easy to understand information about the data set so that we can see the big picture and understand what the data means about the world we live in. That sounds pretty useful, huh? So let's learn what each property really is and find out how to calculate them for any particular data set. Let's start with the mean. You may not have ever heard of something called the mean before, but I'll bet you've heard of the average. If so, then I've got good news. Mean means average. Mean and average are just two different terms for the exact same property of a data set. The mean, or average, is an extremely useful property. To understand what it is, let's look at a simple data set that contains 5 numbers. As a visual aid, let's also represent those numbers with stacks of blocks whose heights correspond to their values. 1, 8, 3, 2, 6. Right now, since each of the 5 numbers is different, the stacks of blocks are all different heights. But what if we rearrange the blocks with the goal of making the stacks the same height? In other words, if each stack could have the exact same amount, what would that amount be? Well, with a bit of trial and error, you'll see that we have enough blocks for each stack to have a total of 4. That means that the mean, or average, for our original data set would be 4. Some of the numbers are greater than 4, and some are less. But if the amounts could all be made the same, they would all become 4. So that's the concept of the mean. It's the value you'd get if you could smooth out or flatten all of the different data values into one consistent value. But is there a way that we could use math to calculate the mean of a data set? After all, it would be very inconvenient if we always had to use stacks of blocks to do it. There's got to be an easier way. To learn the mathematical procedure for calculating the mean, let's start with blocks again. But this time, instead of using trial and error, let's use a more systematic way to make the stacks all the same height. This way involves a clever combination of addition and division. We know that we want to end up with 5 stacks that all have the same number of blocks, right? So first, let's add up all of the numbers, which is like putting all of the blocks we have into one big stack. Adding up all of the numbers, or counting all the blocks, shows us that we have a total of 20. Next, we divide that number, or stack, into 5 equal parts. Since the stack has a total of 20 blocks, dividing it into 5 equal stacks means that we'll have 4 in each, since 20 divided by 5 equals 4. So that's the math procedure you use to find the mean of a data set. It's just two simple steps. First, you add up all the numbers in the set, and then you divide the total you get by how many numbers you added up. The answer you get is the mean of the data set. Let's use that procedure to find the mean age of the members of this fine-looking family here. If we add them all up using a calculator, or by hand if you'd like, the total of the ages is 222 years. But then we need to divide that total by the number of ages we added, which is 6. 222 divided by 6 is 37. So that's the mean age of all the members in this family. All right, that's the mean. Now what about the median? The median is the middle of a data set. It's the number that splits the data set into two equally sized groups or halves. One half contains members that are greater than or equal to the median, and the other half contains members that are less than or equal to the median. Sometimes finding the median of a data set is easy, and sometimes it's hard. That's because finding the middle value of a data set requires that its members be in order from the least to the greatest, or vice versa. And if the data set has a lot of numbers, it might take a lot of work to put them in the right order, if they aren't already that way. So to make things easier, let's start with a really basic data set that isn't in order. It's pretty easy to see that we can put this data set in order from the least to the greatest value just by switching the 2 and the 1. There, now we have the data set 1, 2, 3, and finding the median or middle of this data set is easy. It's just 2, because the 2 is located exactly in the middle. That almost seems too easy, doesn't it? Don't worry, it gets harder. But before we try a harder problem, I want to point out that sometimes the mean and the median of a data set are the same number, and sometimes they're not. In the case of our simple data set, 1, 2, 3, the median is 2, and the mean is also 2, as you can see if we rearrange the amounts or follow the procedure we learned to calculate the mean. But what about the first data set that we found the mean of? We determined that the mean of this data set is 4, but what about the median? Well, the median is the middle, and since this data set is already in order from least to greatest, it's easy to see that the 3 is located in the middle since it splits the other members into 2 equal groups. So for this data set, the mean is 4, but the median is 3. So to find the median of a set of numbers, first you need to make sure that all the numbers are in order, and then you can identify the member that's exactly in the middle by making sure there's an equal number of members on either side of it. Okay, so far so good. But some of you may be wondering, what if a data set doesn't have an obvious middle member? All of the sets we've found the median of so far have an odd number of members. But what if a set has an even number of members, like the data set 1, 2, 3, 4? There isn't a member in the middle that splits the set into 2 equally sized groups. If that's the case, we can actually use what we learned about the mean to help us out. If the data set has an even number of members, then to find the median, we need to take the middle 2 numbers and calculate the mean or average of those 2. By doing that, we're basically figuring out what number would be exactly halfway between the 2 middle numbers, and that number will be our median. For example, in the set 1, 2, 3, 4, we need to take the middle 2 numbers, 2 and 3, and find the mean of those numbers. We can do that by adding 2 and 3, and then dividing by 2. 2 plus 3 equals 5, and 5 divided by 2 is 2.5. So the median of the data set is 2.5. Even though the number 2.5 isn't actually a member of the data set, it's the median because it represents the middle of the data set and it splits the members into 2 equally sized groups. Okay, so now you know the difference between mean and median, but what about the mode of a data set? What in the world does that mean? Well, mode is just a technical word for the value in a data set that occurs most often. In the data sets we've seen so far, there hasn't even been a mode because none of the data values were ever repeated. But what if you had this data set? This set has 6 members, but some of the values are repeated. If we rearrange them, you can see that there's 1, 1, 2 2s, and 3 3s. The mode of this data set is the value that occurs most often or most frequently, so that would be 3 since there's 3 3s. Now don't get confused just because the number 3 was repeated 3 times. The mode is the number that's repeated most often, not how many times it was repeated. As I mentioned, if each member in a data set occurs only once, it has no mode. But it's also possible for a data set to have more than one mode. Here's an example of a data set like that. In this set, the number 7 is repeated twice, but so is the number 15. That means they tie for the title of mode. This set has 2 modes, 7 and 15. Okay, So now that you know what the mean, median, and mode of a data set are, let's put all that new information to use in one final real-world example. Suppose there's this guy who makes and sells custom electric guitars. Here's a table showing how many guitars he sold during each month of the year. Let's find the mean, median, and mode of this data set. First, to find the mean, we need to add up the number of guitars sold in each month. You can do the addition by hand or you can use a calculator if you want to. Either way, be careful since that's a lot of numbers to add up and we don't want to make a mistake. The answer I get is 108. So that's the total he sold for the whole year. But to get the mean sold each month, we need to divide that total by the number of months, which is 12. 108 divided by 12 is 9. So the mean, or average, is 9. Next, to find the median of the data set, we're going to have to rearrange the 12 data points in order from smallest to largest so we can figure out what the middle value is. There, that's better. Since there's an even number of members in this set, we can't just choose the middle number. So we're going to have to pick the middle two numbers and then find the mean of them. 9 and 10 are in the middle since there's an equal number of data values on either side of them. So we need to take the mean of 9 and 10. That's easy. 9 plus 10 equals 19, and then 19 divided by 2 is 9.5. So the median number of guitars sold is 9.5. That means that in half of the months, he sold more than 9.5, and in half of the months, he sold less than 9.5. Last of all, let's identify the mode of this data set, if there is one. Well, let's see. There's 2 8s in the data set. Oh, but there's 3 10s. That looks like the most frequent number. So 10 is the mode of this data set. It's the result that occurred most often. All right, so that's the basics of mean, median, and mode. There are 3 really useful properties of data sets, and now you know how to find them. But sometimes the hardest part about mean, median, and mode is just remembering which is which. So remember that mean means average, median is in the middle, and mode starts with MO, which can remind you that it's the number that occurs most often. Remember, to get good at math, you need to do more than just watch videos about it. You need to practice. So be sure to try finding the mean, median, and mode on your own. As always, thanks for watching Math Antics, and I'll see you next time. Learn more at mathantics.com.
All right. So I hope you have understood the concept. Let me brief it out to you again. Just a minute, please.
Mom, stuck on this assignment. It's on mean, median, and mode.
Oh, Cody, we'll take a break for a second and take the trash out, and then we'll get to work on it.
Okay.
Okay. So we will be talking about like how to calculate the mean, median, mode. I'll give you a brief of it. So what we learned is mean is equals to sum of terms divided by number of terms. You need to find out the sum and then divide it with the number of terms it has. Next, let's talk about the median. So median, it has 2 different varieties. First is for when you have odd number of terms and when you have even number of terms. For odd number of terms, you need to find out the middle value. You can simply use the formula n plus 1 by 2th term. That's the middle term, where n is the number of terms it has. Similarly, for even values, when you have even number of terms, so median would be the average of n by 2th term plus n by 2 plus 1th term, as in the 2 middle values. And you have to divide them by 2. And mind you, these will give you the positions only. You have to find out the average of the terms in these positions. All right. Next comes the mode. So mode is most repeated value, or which has the highest frequency. I hope the concept is clear to you. Now let's talk about few questions. Okay, so in this, the question given to you is the data 11, 15, 17, x plus 1, 19, x minus 2 and 3. The mean is given to you as 14. You need to find out the value of x. So first of all, you need to add all the data values which are given to you. So this would be 11 plus 15 plus 17 plus x plus 1 plus 19 plus x minus 2 plus 3 divided by how many number of terms are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So this would be equal to 14. Now by using the laws of linear equations, you can simply solve this. Let's look at the solution. So in this case, they have given you the sum as 64 plus 2x. 2x means this plus this gives you 2x, and all the numbers gives you 64 as the result. And we need to divide it with the number of terms, that is equals to 7. So 64 plus 2x divided by 7 is equals to 14. Upon cross multiplication, 14 into 7 would be equal to 64 plus 2x. Now 14 into 7 gives you 98, and then you shift it to the other side. Upon subtraction, you get 2x is equals to 34 and x comes out to be 17. So now, after putting in the value of x in the given data, this is your data set. And you have to find out the mode as well. So as we discussed, mode is the highest repeating value. So in this case, 15 is the value which is repeating twice. So that means mode of the data set becomes 15. I hope the concept and question is clear to you. Now let's move further. Next comes introduction to the grouped data or weighted mean. Grouped data means when you convert the data in the form of class intervals. So that is known as grouped data. We are grouping the data in the form of class intervals. All right. Now, weighted mean. Weight means the frequency associated with each class interval. How do you find out the mean for this? So, in this case, what we do, we need the data values with its frequency. So, this is for ungrouped data actually. This formula is for ungrouped data. For group data, you have separate set of formulas. So now for group data, ungrouped data, what you do, you multiply the data value with its frequency. Weight is basically frequency. And these are the data values divided by the weight. That's the number of terms, that is frequency. Let's take an example. So in this case, what they have done, a class of 25 students took a science test. 10 students had an average score of 80. The other students had an average score of 60. What is the average score of the whole class? The total number of students are given to you as 25, out of which 10 students had an average of 80. That means the sum of terms would be data values multiplied with its arithmetic mean. And then other students had an average score of 60. So remaining are 15. That means this is basically the number of terms multiplied with the mean. So what do you get? 800 plus 15 into 6 would be 90. So 900. Upon addition, you get 1700 as the sum of all the terms. So now you have to find out the average score of whole class. So average score of whole class would be total number of sum of terms divided by total number of terms. Total number of terms are 25. So 1700 divided by 25. Let's cancel out the terms by 5. So this would be 3 and then what? Yeah. So this would be 6 and then 8. So answer comes out to be 68 as the mean. So answer is 68 as per the slide as well. Now let's move further for another set of practice questions. Find the mode of the given data. So this is the data given to you. Now we have to look for the most repeated term. Let's look at it. Now in this case 3.1 and 3.1, it has a frequency of 2. Similarly 3.3 and 3.3 also has a frequency of 2. That means 3.1 and 3.3 are the mode values for the given data. Next question. Suppose that a marketing firm conducts a survey of 1000 households to determine the average number of TVs each household owns. The data shows a large number of households with 2 or more 3 TVs and smaller number with 1 or 4. Every household in the sample has at least 1 TV and no household has more than 4. Find the mean number of TVs per household. So basically these are the data sets given to you, and this is the frequency or the weight given to you. Now what we learned, we need to multiply the data value with its frequency. That means this would be 1 into 73 plus 2 into 378 plus 3 into 459 plus 4 into 90, and then you need to divide with the sum of all these. The sum of all these will be 1000. So upon calculation, let's see what do you get. Answer comes out to be 2.566. Sum of the terms was 2566, and then when you divide it with the number of terms, that is 1000, you get the result as 2.566. So with this, we completed this part of the chapter. I hope there is no doubt and everything is clear to you. All right. So we will be talking about the next part of the chapter in the next slides. Thank you so much.